Learn webinar series. We really appreciate you joining us, and as you know, ISM is now merged with SWK, so we have a lot more people attending our Lunch and Learns. We welcome everyone. I wanted to note that SWK also has the largest Sage affiliate VAR program, so we'd also like to welcome any of our PSP customers who are out there. If you have any questions on SWK and ISM merger or any of our programs, please let us know. My name is Sherry Palumbo, and I'm one of your SWK customer account managers, and today it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters. We're going to be looking at a demonstration on business insights for Sage 100 with our own senior consultant, Bruce Kern. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. All lines will remain muted during the presentation to prevent background noise and interruptions. If you have any questions, please type it into the chat box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar sidebar and then hit send question to all staff at any time during the webinar. Note that this webinar is also being recorded and it will be distributed after the presentation for your use. So without further ado, let me turn this over to Bruce so we can get started. Hey Bruce, welcome, and it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Can we confirm that everybody can see my screen with the Sage 100 up on it?
Bruce, I am actually not. You may want to unshare and reshare.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm having some difficulty here, Sherry. I'm not seeing how I can do that. Can you make me the presenter?
Well, that would probably help. I apologize. You're in several times here, so let me know if you're getting this.
Okay, I am getting it. Okay, so I'm going to pop it up here. Let's hopefully that
we can see everything now.
Okay, all right. So everyone can see the Sage 100 up on the screen.
Yes, that was my error. I apologize.
No worries. Nothing like live TV. You know, that's the way it goes. All right. Okay. So welcome everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Like I said, nothing like live TV. We are going to cover the business insights. Sherry, thank you for the nice introduction. So Business Insights is a module here. It's one of your standard modules that you have in your Sage 100 install. And there's actually a couple different pieces to it. So we're going to touch on each one of these pieces, and we're going to spend the focus of our attention on the Explorer piece, but we're going to talk about the other pieces briefly, just by way of giving you a kind of an introduction here. So here we have the first piece of the Business Insights is the dashboard. This is a configurable dashboard that has various elements that you can give to various users so that what they see on their dashboard is specific to them. What I've done is I've gone through and added the whole kitchen sink. And so I'm just going to gloss through the Business Insights dashboard real quick with you to kind of cover that. We're using demonstration data today, and it's dated May of 2020. So you may notice that the dates I'm using today are in the future. Sage is always thinking forward. That's what I say. And then let me blow this up a little bit. So here we are. We're looking at the Business Insights dashboard, and I gave myself everything. So I'm going to kind of scroll through. The Business Insights dashboard kind of gives you a high-level overview with lots of graphical representations, some key numbers in various areas. So here we see we've got some accounts payable analysis. As we scroll down through the Business Insights dashboard, we'll notice that we have access to certain reports and information by just drilling down right on any of these underlying fields. As we scroll down, we see that we have information on vendors and purchases. We can get into any of these vendors if we'd like to. There's some accounts payable analysis. One of the things that we always have to deal with in accounting is cash flow. So there's cash flow predictions and cash flow expectation information here. As we scroll through, we get into some of the sales information, top customers, and then my favorite part at the bottom is the financial information. So you can get lots of ratio analysis, budget information, and various other ratios in here to help kind of monitor the business. So if you ever want to set that up, let us know. We can help you with that. That's all I'm going to say about the dashboard. It's a pre-configured thing. You just give the predefined elements, and that's pretty much what you get. Now, there's also a piece of the Business Insights called the Reporter. So for those of you who've used Sage for a while, you might know about the Crystal Reports. It's a standard report writing program that all the standard reports are pretty much written with, and you can also write your own custom reports. The problem with Crystal Reports is that you have to know something about the databases. And what the Business Insights Reporter is it's a nice front end to the whole Crystal program, and it walks you through a wizard to where you can just pick your fields.
No, I'm just going to play it. Just play at the same time.
Sherry, is there any way we can mute all the users? I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Everybody is muted. I'm not understanding where this feedback is coming from. All users are muted. So let me try muting and unmuting. Give me 1 second. Bruce, are you there? Bruce, you're the only one unmuted, and that noise is coming through. Bruce, are you there?
Can't hear Bruce.
Everyone, please bear with us while we get through this technical issue. Thank you. Apologies, everyone. Bruce is calling back in. He was actually entered in as a presenter about 10 times, which I think was causing all of the background noise. So we've gotten all of that closed out, and Bruce will be calling back in.
Can anyone hear
Bruce,
me?
There you are. We've got you, Bruce.
Okay. Gee whiz, off to a rough start. All right. So, Sherry, can you tell me what the last thing anybody actually might have heard was so that I kind of know where to pick back up?
Exactly where you said, Sherry, there's a lot of background noise. Can you mute everyone?
Okay. Do you think we got through the dashboard? the Business Insights dashboard. Should I show that again real quick?
I would show it again real quick. The noise was very
All right.
disrupting.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I think we finally got it resolved. So I started out by talking about the Business Insights module, and I explained that there's 3 components: a dashboard, a reporter, and an explorer. And then what I wanted to show you was the dashboard. So I had displayed this dashboard here, and we'll get rid of some of this other junk. And so over here, you see that I have the dashboard, and this is configurable by user. So the idea is that you can individually pick and choose what a user gets. And so I'm going to scroll right back up to the top and kind of go back through. So I gave myself everything here. So there's lots of charts with, operation information. Here's some information on accounts payable. You can get to various reports with these hyperlinks in the dashboard. As you scroll through here, lots of different information. I'm not going to cover all these, but there's stuff on AR, AP, there's inventory, and then sales, customer analysis. I'm going to go toward the bottom and just talk about the financial information. There's a lot of financial information here, including some nice ratio analysis, near and dear to my heart. So this is great for high-level executives or for anyone who just wants some quick, high-level information about things going on in the system in different areas. So you can set those up fairly easily. Let us know if you need any help setting those up. Okay, moving on to the next piece here. We also have something called the Business Insights Reporter. So for those of you who've used Sage for a while, you know that it comes with Crystal Reports. All the stock reports are Crystal. You also can have the ability with Crystal Reports to write your own custom reports yourself. The problem with using Crystal Reports is that it's very technical. You have to know quite a bit about the database, and not to mention some technical skills about how to actually use the program itself. So what they've done to kind of help you with that is they have the Business Insights Reporter, and it is a front end to the Crystal interface where you can click on this create new report, go through a wizard, and you just nilly-willy pick fields and tell it how you want it filtered, how you want it sorted, etc. And then it makes the report for you. And they come with, they're kind of based off these pre-designed views, so there's less technical skill required. Here's an example of a report that I went through and built. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the proceed button here to show you it. And you can set it up for runtime parameters, etc. So here I've got a customer drop-off report. The purpose of this report is the concept was that we're trying to find customers who maybe haven't ordered from us in a while, but have been in our database for some time. So I'm just going to hit preview here, take a look at this report. And up it comes. Blow that up for you here. It's just like anything else. You can add logos, customize the formatting, do whatever you want to do. I made just kind of a simple report here, and you can see that it's got the basic information that I asked it for. So that's all we're going to cover on that. The point of the Business Insights Reporter is it's very wizard-driven, less technical skill required. All right, now we're going to talk about the Explorer here. This is actually the star of the show today that we're going to be doing. And this is a great new feature that Sage added, maybe one of the best things that they've added in years. So what we have here, I'm just going to go into a view here. So under the Business Insights Explorer, there's a number of these views. If you scroll down, you can see there's quite a few of them. Now, there's also an Explorer menu under each module. So if I go into Accounts Receivable, for example, and I see the Explorer menu there, it only has that module's views, whereas the one up above has all of the views for the entire system. So depending on what you want, or if you know where to go and you want a shorter list, you can just go there. So I'm going to open up a view here and just talk about the view itself, and then we'll get into doing some fun stuff, hopefully. All right, so this is the basic Business Insights Explorer type of a screen. We'll talk about the orientation here a little bit. You've got various toolbars up here. They've got a view toolbar, which goes forward and back and can drill into things. You've got a data toolbar here that does things like sorting and grouping and some filtering. You have a kind of they call this the Explore toolbar. It has settings. We'll talk about the settings here, where you can create your own dashboards and save them. That toggles that, which setting you're actually on. You have a tools toolbar down here. This does things like adding summary footers or group summary footers so that you can do some additional formula type fields. And then this upper kind of grid here, they call that the data view grid or the upper grid. Sometimes I call it the primary grid. And then down here you have the lower grid, or what's called the preview pane. The idea here is that when I highlight a record up above, like right now I'm on 01 ABF, and I currently have this preview tab here. It says I'm looking at the customer sales history by period. That's what's showing in the second part of the screen down here. So if I change the record to a different customer, I get different customer sales history by period in this example. So as I change the record, you can see that the information down below is changing. Now I could also, I also want to talk about the status bar down here. So on the very bottom down here, it tells us that we are in the customer view. It also tells us that at the top, in case we forgot, it tells us the user we're logged in as, the company that we're in this case AO3. This 21 rows refers to the upper grid. How many rows of data is there up there? And then the 3 rows down here in the status bar tells us how many records there are in the secondary grid. Now I can use this thing over here called the navigation pane to change. If I'm on the preview button, then I can change what's going to show up down below. So for example, if I hit the customer contacts, I'm no longer looking at the sales history by period, but now I'm looking at the customer contacts. So here's the contacts for Breslin. If I change this to ABF, I will see the ABF contacts. So that's a little bit on that. Now this navigation pane has a couple other options that it can do. It can do this explore button, which can open up some different views in there. And then there's also a tasks button here, which opens up certain tasks. So the idea with these tasks is that whatever record I'm on, if I click a task, it's going to open that task. So for example, if I was highlighted on Maverick Papers here, for example, and I wanted to enter a sales order for that customer right from the screen, I would hit the enter sales order button, and then it would prompt me for, you know, in this case, my system date. Let me pop that in there real quick. And it'll take me right into sales order entry. Okay, so you can access various tasks from that, and we'll see how that can be a real asset, hopefully later in the demo. Okay. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to be playing a lot with this primary grid. So we're going to get rid of this navigation pane. So I'm going to come up here under the view menu, and I can turn any of those off that I want. The one way of dealing with that is just to uncheck the navigation pane, and then that goes away. I could also have pinned it and unpinned it so it pops in and out of the screen, but you know, my preference is to just go ahead and turn it off for now. So now we're going to actually play around with this a little bit, and we're going to play with a different view. So we're just going to close this view for a minute, and we're going to come back to our Sage, and we're going to look for the customer open invoice fields and talk about a little bit of the functionality, and then work our way into some more advanced features, hopefully. So here we are. We're going to go to accounts receivable, and since we're looking at customer invoices, open invoices, we're going to go to the customer explore menu, and we're going to go into this customer open invoices view. So open invoices, of course, you know, is you know, obviously a key area that we want to focus on when we're doing accounting and collections and so on. So, and I'm going to loosely refer to collection scenario throughout today's webinar as far as the BIE parts goes. So we'll just play with that a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do here is just talk about how do we actually manipulate the data that's in this screen. So one of the things we can do is remove fields. That's, you know, one of the key things you need to be able to do. Very easy to do a number of different ways, and I'm just going to show you some different ways of doing things. So let's say, for example, this terms code column here, let's say I don't need that. The easiest way to remove a field is just to hover over it with your mouse, left click with your mouse, and then drag that field off of the screen while you're holding your left mouse button. Drag it off any direction that you want, nilly-willy. So I'm going to just drag this off to the top, and then boom, it went away. Now, let's say I don't need this comment. Another way I could do that would be to right-click over this column and choose column settings. And I could go to the comment field here, and I could just uncheck that box right like that, and it's gone. You can see from the screen up above, it's already removed it from my screen. Now I'm going to check it back on for a minute and show you yet a third way. The other thing you could do is you could do the edit column settings. Go into the column settings, you're back in that same spot, and I could uncheck it from there. So you'll develop your own style. I think it's quickest to just hover over the header fields here and right click and go to the column settings. To me, that seems to work the fastest. So you'll be seeing me do that. That's my personal style, although there's at least 2 or 3 other ways you could do it. Now, if we're going to teach you how to remove fields, we should probably teach you how to add some fields. So we're going to add the date of last payment. So I'm going to do this more the slow way, and then you'll see me kind of converting over to the right-click column settings approach. But we're going to add the date of last payment. So that might be helpful in a collection scenario. I can go to Edit, Column Settings, and I'm going to look for my date of last payment in my available columns here, and notice that I don't see it. So I still can get it possibly, it just means it isn't in my immediate pick list. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the Add button. So we're going to click the Add button, and here what we're seeing is the tables that the view has. So similar to the Business Insights Reporter, where you walk through a wizard and it lets you pick from available fields in kind of pre-grouped views, same concept with Business Insights Explorer. It has access to a lot of information, but it's limited in terms of what tables that information is coming out of. So these are the 3 tables that this particular view uses. Other views use different tables. So the AR customer, I believe, has the date of last payment in it. So I will open that table up. I'm looking at all of the fields in the AR customer master table, and I'm going to see if I can find my date of last payment in here. So bear with me while I scroll down and try to find that. There it is. There's my date of last payment. I'm just going to highlight that field and click OK. And then there it is. It shows up in my little columns list over here, and I can hit OK. And now it's showing up on my far right column. So anytime you add a new column to a Business Insights Explorer view, it will automatically add that column to the far right by default. Okay, let's do another one here. Let's do the average days overdue. That could be something that might come in play in a collection scenario. We'll go to the column settings. I don't see it in the list, so I'm going to do a similar action. I'm going to go to the customer, and we're going to look for that average days overdue, average days due. Okay, there's the average days overdue field. I'm going to highlight that, and we're going to do something a little different on this one. So it brings in the full description here based on the name of the field. So what I want to do is, that's going to display a number that hopefully isn't very big, certainly not as wide as this title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to truncate that. So I'm just going to take out the due, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to shorten the average to the average, and I'm just going to make it say average days over. Okay, and then I can also control the width of that column here. So I don't know what increment that's in, but it's got to be a pretty small increment. And I'm just going to change that to 110 right there. And I'm going to hit OK. So now I have my average days overdue, again, showing up on the far right. Now, another thing that you can do here to add fields is, it's hard to see, but in the very upper left, there's this little box. It has some dots on it with some lines. It's kind of like right in the corner there. So if I click that little guy there, I'm going to get that same list of fields that I have when I hit right click and go to column settings. So the difference is here, all I can do is either check or uncheck to add or remove. I don't get any of that field to add new fields. I don't get to change the title, column title, the format or anything. So that's yet another way you can add some fields, though. It's dependent upon what you've got available in that list. All right, now we're going to talk about UDFs. So, and we'll try to pull this together at the end. So just for a moment here, I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go to accounts receivable here, and I'm just going to kind of preview something for you guys so you see where this is coming from. So here in accounts receivable, we have added a tab with the custom office module, which most of you have. Not everyone has it, but most everyone has it. And with that, we simply added a tab that didn't exist. And then we created our own fields to help track collection activity. So for example, we have a date field with a little date, widget. We have a drop-down box to identify the person who was called, the last person who called on this account. We have a status box to indicate the status of this collection effort. And then of course, we have a notes field to type notes about the collection activity. So you can create custom fields in Sage, and you can use those in your Business Insights Explorer views. So one of those fields was, I think, the status. So what I'm going to do is show you how to add a UDF. If you have custom office fields, I'll show you how to add those real quick. So I'm going to right-click my column settings. Can be anywhere on that header. I'm going to go to my column settings, and I'm looking in my list. I don't see those custom fields there, so I'm going to try to add them. So I'm going to click the Add button. And those are in the customer list also. So I'm going to highlight my customer table. I'm going to expand that table. And generally speaking, when you have custom fields, they're generally at the bottom of the stock field. So right here, user updated key is the last stock Sage 100 field. All of these other fields down here are my custom fields that I've added to the system on my own. And the term, the three letters UDF that you see all the way down on all those fields stands for user defined field. It's just standard terminology in custom office. When you create a custom field, we call them UDFs, or user defined fields. So here is the UDF for my collection status. So if I wanted to highlight that, I can highlight that field. Now it comes into my list, and it kind of looks ugly with that UDF status in capital letters. So what I want to do is I want to pretty this up real quick. So now I'm going to call this my collection status, and we'll just put it in there like that. And then now we have the collection status. We can see at least this one here for ABF says it's got a check in the mail. Okay. All right, so we're going to show another thing that we can do here. We're going to add another field, and we're going to do something different to it. So what we're going to say is we want to have the current balance. So Sage chops up the customer balances, in this case, in the multiple timing buckets. You have a current bucket, and then you have aging categories. Depending on how your system is set up, they're typically 30, 60, 90, and 120. So what I'm going to do is hit the Add button here, and I'm going to go into the customer table again. We're going to try to locate that current balance, and we're going to do something to that field once we get it there. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting in the right neighborhood. Here's the current balance field. Here's those aging categories we talked about. So there's the current balance. And I'm just going to leave the description like it is. And then we're going to do something a little different to this one, and we'll probably do this a few times in today's demo. So here under the format, this is a currency field. It's a dollar amount, right? So we're going to look at the drop-down box here, and we're going to say we're going to format that as a currency field. And then I'm going to also use this column level formatter. And then here's this column level formatter box down below. So what it's going to do when I check that box is it's going to read the format field that I have up above, in this case currency, and it's going to open up that format box down below. And I can pick the drop down box to change my format. Let me tell you how to interpret what this is actually doing here. So what it's saying here in this format box is the first section here, up until that punctuation mark is that's saying here's the format for a positive number. So it's saying if you're a positive number, you should have a $sign, you know, and if you're in the thousands, you should have a comma, and then you should have .00 for your pennies. This is saying if it's a negative number, you should have brackets around you to indicate that you're negative. And this is saying that if you're a 0, you should just display 0. All right, so maybe that's all I want to do, but I can do something else as well. If I position my cursor in any one of those 3 places, I can format what that number is actually going to look like with a color in addition to the actual mask. So here I am, I've got my cursor flashing there in the $sign. You can even go in front of it if you want. What I'm going to do is hover over that where my cursor is. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose to insert a color tag. Now notice what pops out here is a list of colors to easily choose from. So I'm going to, since this is a current balance, I'm going to pick green because green is good, means it's not past due, it's good. So there it is right there. Now, what I can do here, this still isn't very functional because everything's in a big list. Now, what if I wanted to group by my customers? So this big gray bar across the top, it's kind of hard to see, but it says drag a column header here to group by that column. So if I wanted to, for example, I could drag my customer number up there. And now I have a group. Here is ABF, all of their invoices. I could shrink that up. And then I have my next customer, all their invoices, next customer and their invoices, and so on. So now that's a little more helpful there. So I have the individual invoices, their balances, plus I have a column telling me what their current balance is. So we'll just show a couple more features on this one, and then we'll probably change to a different view. So another really helpful thing that you can do here is you can use these summary footers and group summary footers. So by virtue of the fact that I have a group, in this case I grouped it by the customer by just dragging that field right up there with my mouse, then I can turn on this group summary footer. So if I click that button, then what happens is underneath each one of my groups or customers, I'll have certain boxes that just show up. And then what I can do here is I can right click in those boxes and I can add some type of data. So if I right click, I can choose to do a sum. So if I'm adding up their balances, that makes the most sense. Here's the discount. So any dollar fields, a lot of times it makes sense to do the sum because they're dollars. Another thing I might want to do is do a count. So here's my invoice date. I can right click. So what you get available when you right click is dependent upon the field itself. So notice that the sum is grayed out on the date field. But look, what isn't grayed out is my count. So right now I can see that ABF has $5,700 and change in their current balance, and that they have a total of 17 invoices in their listing here. And whereas this other customer has only 6, their balance is only $645. Now I can shrink these up one at a time, or I can just right click and collapse all of those groups at the same time if I want to. And I can also right click again to expand them all. Now that's handy to have those totals underneath each customer, but it would also be helpful if I had a grand total all the way at the bottom. So if I scroll all the way down to the bottom here and see my last customer here is Shepherd, if I hit this button right here, this is my summary footer. This will open up and add similar type of boxes at the bottom of the whole report. So if I come over here to my date where I've counted the individual customer invoices, for example, I can right click there and I can get a total count. So now I know I've got 103 invoice records in this view, and then I have my individual breakdown. Here I can go ahead and hit the sum to fill these in, and I can see here's the grand total for everything that's in the screen on these dollar fields. So very helpful to do those types of things. Okay, so there we are. Let's see here. For our next example here, we're going to do more with formulas and color coding. Okay, so I'm not going to bother saving this one. We'll just close that one for now. We'll talk about saving a little later. Okay, we're going to open up the customer view here again. All right, so here's our customer view. And so here I am, it opens up and I have the standard view. So the setting right here is standard. That standard setting, it's very similar to the Crystal reports in Sage, where you have a standard report setting and then you can save them as different settings with your preferences. So we always want to leave the standard Business Insights Explorer views. My recommendation is we leave those stock. And then when we want to customize something for our own personal use, that we save it as a different version, a different setting, if you will. So what I'm going to do is I'm getting ready to manipulate this setting. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and save my setting before I start changing it so that it's already in my custom setting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a file, save as, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm just going to give it like a date code for today, just for ease, but you could call that whatever you want. Sally's reports. I recommend you stay away from, special characters. Keep it simple. Don't get too cute with it. And then I have the option of saving this as a public setting or as a private setting. If I save this as a public setting, it means other users will be able to see my setting and they can use the information there. If I save it as a private setting, it means nobody's going to see it. They won't be able to change my views. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as public. And now that I've done that, my setting now says it's whatever name I gave it, in this case, a little date code there. And if I hit the drop down, I'll see that I still have my standard. I may have other views. There's one here called Collection Dashboard. We might take a look at that later. So I can go back and forth between my views here. So there's my view. That's the one we're going to work on. And we're going to do some more formulas and color coding here. So what we're going to do is, keeping with our loose collection scenario, we see that we've got the current balance, which we actually added to our other view that we were in. We have these aging categories here, aging 1, 2, 3, and 4. But what we don't have is we don't have a total past due amount. Okay, so if I'm doing collections, that might be helpful to know. So we're going to do a basic formula here, and I'm going to right-click on my column settings here, and we're going to do a formula. So this is our first calculated formula. So do a formula, you hit this calculated button under the column settings, and you got to give your formula a name. So we're going to just call it, we're just going to call it past due. I'm just going to abbreviate it past due AMT for amount. And then to start with here, we're going to go down below. The box below, this is where we actually put the formula, and then the stuff below is what we can use in the formula. So for this example, I'm going to keep it simple. We'll make it more complicated as we go. So here I'm going into a table. I'm going to go into the customer table, and here I see all of the fields under the customer table, and I'm going to create a formula to create a total past due balance. Now, the past due balance is whatever's in those aging categories 1 through 4. So I'm just going to pick, double click aging category 1 plus aging category 2 plus, pretty easy, right? Anybody can do this. Aging category 4, and there it is. So now I've got a formula. I've added those together. I'm going to hit OK. And this one here, I'm going to format that. Since this is a past due figure, what I want to do is I want to draw attention to that by color coding that in red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my format button here. I'm going to tell it you're a currency field, because you are. I'm going to check my column level formatter, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say that if that past due number is a positive number, what I'm going to do here then is I'm going to insert a red color tag. So I'm going to right click my cursor in front of that little dollar sign. I'm going to come down to the insert color tag, and I'm going to choose the color of my choice, in this case red, and I've done it. Now we're going to move over here, and I'm going to now show you how to move fields left and right. And so there's my past due amount. Notice anything that's a positive number for past due is now red. The other numbers are not red. And then to move a field, I'm going to hover over the field with my mouse. I'm going to left click, and I'm just going to drag it with my mouse. You can see the little green arrows are indicating kind of where it's going. And I'm just going to move that right in between my current balance and my aging categories. There they are. Now, another thing I could do is I go to my column settings, and if I wanted to add some power to the aging category 1, maybe the person doing collections doesn't even know what that is, I could also update these titles to say like 30 days. So, of course, I would want to make sure that that was what was actually set up in your system. So I'll add the 30 days to that one. You could update the others as well. We're not going to do that to save time. All right. And then we're going to add a total balance column here. So now we have a formula for the past due. We've got the breakdown by aging category. We've got our current balance. But wouldn't it be nice to have a total balance as long as we've got all these balances here? So we'll get a chance to show you another feature while we do that. We'll go to the column settings. We need another calculated formula now. So we're going to go to calculated, and we're going to call it total, if I can type. They didn't hire me for my typing. Total balance. Total balance. We'll just call it total balance. How about that? Now, in this case, what we're going to do is a little different. I could go add those individual pieces up because we've seen that they're available. But one of the things that we can do with formulas is we can use formulas in formulas. So here I already have a formula for the past due amount. Really all I need to do is pick that formula and then append it or add to it the current balance. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into my calculated fields. I see all my other formulas. There it is. I'm going to double click that. That brings it into the grid up above. And then probably what I'm going to need to do here is I'm going to need to add my current balance. So for that one, I have to get that out of the table. So I'm going to expand my tables now, go into my customer, see if I can find that current balance. And there it is. And I'm going to just come up here and hit plus, and then I'm going to add my current balance to that. Now, I could have added it to the beginning, but it's easier on that screen to do it at the end. Hit OK. There's my total balance. And if I want to format it as currency, I can, or I can just kind of leave it like that. And then I'm just going to hit OK and scroll to the right. And there's my total balance. We'll bring that over here, put that in front of the current balance. And, that one actually, I should have formatted that as a currency. Notice it's not giving me the nice formatting. Easy enough to fix. Go to my column settings, go to my total balance field, and then we'll just format that as a currency field and fix that real quick. So always want to keep it polished. All right, there's that. Let's see here. Now, let me go ahead and save that so we don't lose our progress here. Just like writing crystal reports, as you progress through customizing a dashboard or a screen here, you might want to consider saving it periodically. Just good practice no matter what you do. All right, now we're going to talk about Boolean formulas. So, the term Boolean, some people know what that is. A lot of people don't know what it is. So I'm going to describe what the Boolean formula is before I actually do an example. So a Boolean formula, basically it evaluates data, and then depending on the data, it returns a true or false, a yes or a no type of an evaluation against the data. So if it's looking at, so this can apply to strings or numbers, okay? So if you're looking at a string, meaning it's a non-numeric piece of data, and not to complicate things, but sometimes numbers can also be part of a string. But if it's a string, it's going to look for the number 1, the number 9, the capital letter T, a lowercase t, an uppercase y, or lowercase y. And if it finds those, then it's going to evaluate it to true. If it's looking at numbers, 0 is considered false, and any non-zero value is considered true. Well, what exactly and how would I actually use that type of logic in Sage with a screen here? So we'll do an example here. So what we're going to do is show you how that might work for you. All right, so here we go. We're going to do a Boolean formula. So I'm going to right click, go to my column settings. I'm going to do a calculated field, and I'm going to call this past due, and I'm just going to give it like a YN, past due, yes or no. And what I'm going to do here is go to my calculated fields. I already have a field for the past due amount, so I can see the dollar amount on my screen, so that might be good enough. But for purposes of this example, I'm going to use my past due amount formula. I'm just going to click it and bring it in there. And I'm going to hit OK. So far, it's exactly like my past due formula. The difference is we're going to make a Boolean format out of this. So we're going to go with the format here. We're going to change the drop down. We're going to go to Boolean instead of currency. Then we're going to open up the column level formatter. And here's my Boolean formula. You see there's some other options down here, but this is a yes-no example, so we're going to leave it as the yes-no. And what I said before when I was describing this is if it's looking at numeric data, if it finds a non-zero value, it's going to evaluate it to true or yes. If it finds a zero value, it's going to consider it false or no. So in theory, it should find anything with a past due balance, flag it as a yes. So there we go. Let's see if it worked. And there it is. There's my past due. I could also come over here to my column settings, and if I wanted to, I could also insert the color tag on those. So I could say insert a color tag. I can make that red again, and hit OK. And now if it's past due, the yes will actually show up in red. So there you go. Okay. All right. Let's do something on a named value. All right. So let's see here. So in a lot of computer databases, including Sage, you know, the use of a code to represent something else of more meaning is very common. So we have item codes that represent items with all their details. Customer IDs represents the customer with all its details. And even within the database tables, we have yet more codes with more meaningful data behind them. So sometimes when you're looking at a code for something, you don't actually know what that code represents because you don't have all the other information. So we're going to talk about how you can do a named value type of a formula that might help you deal with scenarios like that. So let's see here. So we're going to add a field that has a code in it. And I'm going to get rid of some of these address fields just because we're not really using them. And we'll get rid of the fax number, and we'll leave the rest of this here. All right, so what I'm going to do is go to my column settings, and I'm going to add a field, and I'm going to add the customer status, okay? So let's go down and find that. All right, there's our customer status. So there's my status field. And if I just hit OK and I look at that, I see there's a codes. There's codes A, there's code I even see a T in there. So the question is, well, what is that? So I'm going to come over here to my column settings. And there's my customer status. And I'm going to use the named value option this time. Okay, so I'm formatting it as a named value. I'm going to use my column level formatter, and because I chose this named value option this time, the named value box down below lights up. So now we've seen numbers, currencies, Boolean. Now we're going to see a named value. So here what I'm going to do is going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to add an I. I'm going to tab into the next box, and I'm going to put in what I want that to say. So if it's an I want it to say inactive. If I see an A, I want it to say active. Hit add. And then one more category I saw up there was a T. So if I see a T, I want it to say temporary. All right. Whoops. Even though I'm dyslexic, I can tell that wasn't spelled right. All right, so there we go. We have defined what those are. If I hit OK now what I'm going to get is actually something spelled out that's actually meaningful. So that's how you would use a named value. Let's see here. All right, now we're going to talk about some functions that you could do. All right, so and we'll do a couple of these here. There's a really interesting one I have coming up. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to use a function here, of a special formula with a function. So we'll come over here and we're going to go to our column settings again, and we're going to come up with. We're just going to keep something simple here. We're going to do a calculated field, and we're going to call this. And this is a silly example. The next one will be a little more realistic. We're going to call it customer name length. Okay, coming over here, and I'm going to find there's some functions here. If I click the functions, you have a long list of functions. So what I'm going to do, I'll just kind of scroll down here. You can see it goes on and on and on and on. So you can play with the functions. What I'm going to do is just a simple one here. We're going to click on the character length function, and it'll insert that function up above. Then all I have to do is tell it, well, what is it that I want the character length to be calculated off of? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight this where it says string. That's the thing it wants. And I'm going to come into there and I'm going to find the customer's name. So under my tables, under the customer, there's a customer name. So if I'm looking down here, it looks like these might be alpha. So if I click the customer name there, if I highlight where it says string and then I click this name here, it'll insert where it said string. It'll insert my field for me. Okay, and this can get a little clunky because you've got to have these brackets and these little in brackets where they belong. I think that is where it needs to be. It looks right to me. But if you have any problems with that, the most likely option is that you're missing one of these brackets. Okay, so there's my customer name length. I'm going to hit OK and just see how that came in. And there it is. I'm going to bring that over to where my customer name is and just drop that guy in there. And, you know, it looks like it's probably doing what it should do. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to close this view, and we're going to do another similar one that I think is a little more interesting. So we're going to come down here. We're going to open up the customer open invoices view. So customer open invoices view. And we're going to do another one here. So this one I like is very interesting. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a custom field, and it's going to be week of the year that something was invoiced. Now, I might actually do this on the history view if I was really trying to do this, but I'm just doing on this one. It's a little faster. So the idea with this, what I came up with this for is you know, sometimes we want to know what are our busy parts of the year, what is seasonality. As business managers, we generally have a pretty good feel for that, but sometimes looking at the hard data indicates things that we didn't realize. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a field called week of the year invoiced. All right, so we'll go column settings, and we're going to do a calculated field, and we're just going to call it week of year. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to look for a function, and the function we're looking for is like week of the year, if we can find it, day of the week, day of the month, day of the year. Let's see here. I guess there's week. Let's go with that. Let's pick week, and then here's our expression. So we're going to highlight the expression, and then we're going to find invoice date. We're going to try to put the invoice date in that where that expression is. So here's our tables. Here's our AR open invoice. That should be where the invoice date is. So we'll look in here. There's invoice date. I insert that in there. I hit OK, and we'll say OK there. Now I have the week of the year indicated here next to the invoice date, and I could do all kinds of interesting stuff with that. So if I, for example, was to group by the week of the year and did a count, I could either do that on, the balance or total sales. So if I light these guys up, I get my totals, and it's by week of the year. I could probably do a graph on that and see quickly where the most number of transactions were, as well as where my total sales were the highest. So that's a fantastic little tool there. Now, so that's grouping by the week of the year. I'm going to get rid of that grouping. Now it goes back to normal. And another way you could do this is you could also, here we have in this database, they've got divisions turned on. A lot of you probably don't, but some of you do. That's a way of segregating your customer bucket into multiple buckets. So if I group by division here, then I've got a breakdown now by my two divisions, Division 1 and Division 2. You can also group by more than one column. So whereas I've grouped by division there, I have all my Division 1 customers grouped under that. I can also do a subgroup for each customer. So now I have Division 1, and it has all the Division 1 customers here, which I'm shrinking up. And I can get subtotals for that, and I have a grand total at the bottom. So you can do multiple layers of grouping here. Now another trick, so you can add all your totals. You can see kind of what's going on there. I'm going to expand all my groups here. And another thing you can do is once you have grouped by a field like division, you no longer have to keep it in your grid. So if I wanted to get rid of this division column, I could do that. I just drag it off. I'm still grouping by the division. I just don't have to see the field in my grid because it's accounted for up here. Okay. All right. All right. So we'll talk about some more stuff here. So I'm not going to bother saving that guy. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to go back to the customer view, the one that we were doing earlier. So let's see here. Let's go into the customer view. Now I'm back. I'm going to choose my view with today's date on it, and we're going to add a field here, and then we're going to do some filtering. Okay, so it says they want me to add the average days over. All right, so I'll go to my column settings. We're going to add the average days over. I'm going to click add. I happen to know it's in the customer. I'm going to scroll down to it, and then we're going to do some work with that. Okay, there's the average days over. Okay, we'll shorten it up. All right, and we'll move that guy over here where we can see it. Let's see, current balance, total balance. We'll just put it right there for grins. All right, so now we have the average days over. By the way, you can also just shrink these columns manually, just like you would in Excel. So now we have the average days over, and we're going to talk a little bit about sorting. So, if I if I click on any column, it's going to sort by that column. So let's do that. So let's say I wanted to sort by my average days overdue. If I click that, it just sorted that column based on lowest to highest. It's very hard to see, but there's a little triangle right next to the data filter dropdown. It's a little triangle pointing up. I don't know why they made it so hard to see, but it's telling me that it's going from the lowest number to the highest number. And if I click it again, that triangle points the other way. It goes from the highest number to the lowest number. So you can do that on any column that you have. You just click it, and it sorts it automatically for you. Now, there's also this little drop-down box. So these little black drop-downs, they're just like the data filters in Excel, if you're familiar with that. They do the exact same thing. If you click that, you'll get the list of what's there. You can choose to go custom on it, and then it will give you this filter. We'll play with that in a minute. If I just tell it, you know, the average days overdue equals 0, for example. Now that'd be kind of a silly example in one way, but that little black data filter turns blue. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but a blue data filter means you are filtered by that column. You're no longer seeing everything. Now, I can also see that down here where it's showing me my filter. So I can see that it says average days overdue equals 0. So I could come back up here and I could tell it give me all. And I could put that back to 0 again. Another way I can toggle back and forth with that is I could just uncheck this little box down here where it says average days to do. So back and forth, however I want to do it. Okay, so not too difficult there. And let's see it all. Okay, so now we're going to take it up a little bit of a notch on the filter builder. So this little filter is empty. It's telling us that it has a little short-term memory. So in a given data entry session, the more filters you do, they'll show up down there and you can just pull them back in, but that's a short-term memory. It doesn't retain that long-term. Although you can save a filter with your report, so it's permanent. So I'm gonna hit the filter builder here, and this is where we can add additional filtering criteria, kind of like multiple criteria. So you have the root here. You can make it an and, an or, not or, etc. I'm going to leave it as and we're going to do, we're going to say we want a couple filters that are going to be something and something else, kind of logic. So we're going to say here, let me look here. We're going to say that we're going to click the button and we're going to get a list of our fields that we have available. This would include any custom formulas that we have. So we're going to say that the average days overdue, let's see, where is that? Average days overdue is greater than, and then here, if you click in here, you can get the actual drop down. You can see the data in your data set. So you can pick from that list if you want, or you could nilly-willy type whatever your own criteria is. So in my example, I'm going to say I'm interested in the average days overdue more than 45 as part of it. And then I also want to know anybody who's got a past due account more than $2,000. So here I add my next line. Here's my past due amount. That's the one I want. I'm going to say is greater than or equal to, and in this case, I'm going to say $2,000 because as a company, that's my, that's my threshold that I care about. Now, as soon as I do that and hit OK, it now filters the data. Notice that the average days overdue column has the blue indicator on it on the data filter. It's telling me I'm partially filtered by that column. I also see that the past due amount here is there, and there we are. So we're going to change that, turn that back off, and then we'll play with some more buttons here. So let's see here. Now, if I'm over here, let's see here. Let's get this back to all. I can also play with these columns by sorting in here in these two buttons over here in the upper left. So you can sort by those as well. So I can click that button to sort that way, click that button to sort the other way. I don't tend to use those too much. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so let's see here. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to group it by customer, I guess. All right, and let's not worry about that. Let's talk a little bit about exporting data. That's always popular. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so we have data in our grid. It may or may not have subtotals and group summaries, etc. but we have data in a grid. And one of the nice things about Business Insights Explorer is because it's in a grid, it exports really nicely to Excel. So let's talk about how you export data. So here we can go to File, and then there's an Export Options choice that's in here. So notice that there's a feature for selected records only. So that currently is not checked. If we see a checkbox, if I check that and I come back, I go to my export options, it says the checkbox is next to selected records only. And notice here's the things that we can export to. So by the way, you can also do merges here. So what is selected records only, and how do I select only certain records? So we'll leave that setting on there. How you select individual records for export is, one, you turn on the export selected records only, and then you select your records. So if I wanted to select a record, that's what these little boxes on the very left here are for, as I scroll up and down. So if I want to mark one for export, like this one, I just mark it. It's got a little triangle on it now. And I'm going to pick a couple other records, just nilly-willy. I'm just scrolling down. So now I've got 4 of them selected, and it only leaves that little triangle on the last one you're on, and it replaces those with a dot. Don't ask me why. I didn't design the thing. Then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to my export options. Note that it has my selected records only, and by far the most popular export is to Excel. So I'll go with that option, choose my Excel, and boom, it just exported into Excel for me. And again, because it's a very grid-like interface, it all comes in nice and neat. Any of you have ever tried to export a crystal report before, you'll know that that's not always the case. So I'll close that. We don't need to save it. Now, if I want to export all my records, all I got to do is go File, Export Options, tell it not selected records only. I don't even need to worry about selecting any records. And then I can come back, Export Options, and just choose Excel, and I'll get every record that's in that grid. Boom, there's the entire thing that time. Now, the one thing to keep in mind here is when you do that export to Excel like that, it will lose your group summary footer and your grand total footer if you do that. So if you have those in there, you'll have to replace those if you want to see them in Excel. All right. That is the exporting. Now, we're running low on time, and there's a couple other things I was hoping to show, but I don't want to miss the last best part, which is to kind of try this all together. So there's also some things on printing reports and things that I was going to cover, but what I'm going to do now is kind of paint the picture. So now here, I'm going to go to kind of a collection dashboard. This is one that's a little bit more finished than some of the pieces that we've been kind of throwing together here. So this collection dashboard has credit variance calculations. It has a lot of the stuff that we've already done. And then what we're going to do here is pretend that we're working on a collection scenario. Now notice that here on the right we have our custom fields for the caller ID, when they were last called. There's the call notes, which we can expand and contract. And it'll tell us, we have a column here to tell us how many past due things or how many records they have. So what I'm going to do is come over to the view, turn on my navigation pane again, and let's say it's my job to do collections. So, maybe here I can see my aging categories. It'd be nice to have that total past due formula, by the way. I can see that these guys have some past due balances. So if I decided that, this person needed to be called, what I could do is use this screen right here to call their phone number. I call the customer up. I explain to them, hey, sorry, Bay Pyrotechnics, we've got some invoices that are past due. We are wondering if you'd consider making a payment over the phone for us. And if they agree to do that, then I could go right into my cash receipts for that customer. Now, let's say you had Sage Payment Solutions, or PAYA, as they're calling it these days. I could start my batch number here, and I could start a cash receipt. I could enter the amount that the customer is going to pay me. I could process their credit card right over the phone with them, get our money, and then update that, and then I could go right back over to my customer maintenance screen, opens up the customer that I just took the payment for while I'm on the phone, come over to my collections tab. I can update my call date, who it was that called them, payment taken over the phone, update my note, account collected, etc. Hit accept, save my notes, close it, and I can go on to my next call and see if I can collect some more money. That's just an example of how you can tie the Business Insights Explorer in with some, add-on products like your credit card processing, wrap it in with your custom office, really start using all the pieces together to solve business problems. All right, so I know I went a little long due to our technical glitches there, but that's kind of the end of my demo today. And Sherry, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sherry.
Okay, perfect. And thank you, Bruce, for such a great presentation and great information on this solution. You covered a lot of insightful content today. And again, apologies for the technical difficulties. You logged in somehow all of a sudden as presenter at about 13 times, so wasn't quite sure what happened with that. However, I thank everyone for their patience through that all. And I do have a few questions that have come up, so please feel free to use your chat window or the question pane to ask any questions you may have. So one question is, I joined the meeting a bit late. Can we create multiple reporting views and a default view to cater to the needs of different roles? And can any security be attached to a custom view?
Okay, great answer. So the answer here is yes, you can have multiple views. In this example, we have the standard view. We have multiple public views, and we also have private views. So the security is basically, if you make a private view, it can be your view. You can set a view to be your default. And if you don't really want anybody else to use your view, you'd make that a private view. There is no actual role security, as in with the traditional tasks in Sage 100 through the front end, like access to customer maintenance, for example. There's no settings in there for the Business Insights Explorer. There are some settings for some of the Business Insights, like dashboard, for example. But here it's either private or not private, and you can't have a default.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Next question is there in formulas, are you able to create summary fields like min, max, count, or average?
Yeah, excellent question. The answer is yes. It depends on the column that you're trying to get it for. So really what you do, it's standard functionality with these group summary footers and the summary footer here. So I'm highlighting those with my mouse. Those are these fields here, and then the grand total at the bottom. So if I right click, this is where you get to choose min, max. You can do a count, average, or a sum. Now, some fields don't have all those available depending on their data type. So for example, one of the things I could do is I can come over any of these fields. If I wanted to say, for example, count how many, and this is grouped by salesperson. So Jenny has, these, what looks like about 5 accounts here. If I wanted to find out for sure what I'm looking at there, I would just right click, get my little list, change it to count, and I would confirm that now Jenny has a count of 5. But I could have also done an average. I could have done a min or a max. I could have done any of those, and they all appear to be working. Notice the max is telling us that the biggest number for Jenny is 60, which is the biggest number we're seeing under Jenny. So those are how you would handle that.
Thank you so much for that. And the final question that I'm showing is, what formats other than Excel are available for export?
Okay, great. Well, that's a quick one here. We'll just go to File, Export Options here. And here is basically what you can do. You can do, I guess they consider this an export, but you can, that's more of a merge. Like if you wanted to have a word merge, you send out a letter to customers that are new this week, giving them their sales rep, their, credit limit and the number to call for the first order. But you can export to Access. We've seen the Excel and demonstration. You can put it in Word. I haven't done that one much. You've got Microsoft query definitions, XML. You can go to a web page, or you can even do text. Now, the text is interesting is because a lot of times when you're, a lot of applications can import data. The most common format for a file to be imported to a system, not the only one, but the most common one in my experience is called a comma delimited file. So frequently called a CSV, comma separated value. So comma delimited, comma separated value, same thing. If we were to export that to this, we would potentially have a file that could be used by an application to actually import data. So, but those are your options. Excel's by far the most popular, but there are some other choices here, as you can see in that list. Any other questions?
I am just double checking all panes for questions. I am not seeing any other questions. So again, just a reminder that you will be receiving a follow-up thank you email tomorrow. It will have a link to this recorded version of this webinar attached. And it will also have a survey that we would greatly appreciate if you would fill out so we can continue bringing you good content during these webinars. Bruce, again, thank you very much. And if anyone would like further training or more information on business insights, please reach out to your customer account manager at SWK. And if you're not sure who that is, you can just send an email to CAMTEAM, that's C-A-M as in Mary, team, all one word, camteam@swktech.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week. We look forward to doing webinars with you again. Please join us. Thanks.